Live from Quito, Ecuador, I'm Soini Gray and this is From the South, the daily news brief from Tell Us Your English. And we start this new edition right now. Thank you for joining us. The second round of negotiations between the Venezuelan government and the opposition has stalled. The talks, which were supposed to take place in the Dominican Republic, floundered over statements made regarding the recent dismantling of a terrorist group. Representatives from the mediator countries will now set new dates for another dialogue. The Dominican Foreign Minister spokesman, Hugo Berras, said they're striving to seek the most convenient date within the shortest possible time.
We only have information that we are looking for a new date to be able to carry out the talks, and that the colleagues of former Spanish Prime Minister José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero, the President of the Dominican Republic, Danilo Medina, are aware of the situation and have been following up on this with the foreign ministers from Bolivia and Nicaragua who are here in the Dominican Republic, who, along with the Dominican Foreign Minister Miguel Vargas, will be reconsidering when the most convenient date would be in the shortest time possible to be able to reschedule the talks.
We now go to our correspondent from Caracas, Freddie Gillingham, to give us more information about the negotiations.
So unfortunately, the dialogue between the opposition and the government did not take place today in Santo Domingo. The opposition cancelled in the last minute. They did not attend the meeting. This isn't the first time, however, but they did give various points why they weren't attending. Most controversially, they rejected that they gave any information on the whereabouts of the fugitive Oscar Perez, who was killed in a raid on a terrorist cell just several days ago. Ministers in Santo Domingo are trying to negotiate a new set of dates as we speak. However, let's not get our hopes up too much. Let's just remember that back in 2015, when the opposition won a majority in the parliamentary elections, they walked out and cancelled the entire dialogue with the government altogether. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
We thank Freddie Gillingham for that report. The president of the Venezuelan Assembly, Delcy Rodriguez, has confirmed via her Twitter account that a delegation will travel to the Dominican Republic to meet with the opposition coalition. She said, "We will be in the Dominican Republic to attend the dialogue promoted by President Nicolas Maduro for the peace and sovereignty of Venezuela. Nothing will stop or undermine our firm commitment to have dialogue for a peaceful coexistence and for the benefit of our people." We now go live to Lima, where Pope Francis has just landed after leaving neighboring Chile. This visit is part of the second half of the Pope's trip to the two largely Roman Catholic South American countries, where he's trying to restore credibility to the Catholic Church, especially after sex abuse allegations. So you're seeing the footage there. Pope Francis will remain in Peru until January 21st. As it was in Chile, the rights of the indigenous people will continue to dominate the Pope's agenda.
Practitioners of Andean rituals have gathered in Lima with one objective. They want Pope Francis to make amends for the Church's takeover of the sacred Inca temple, Coricancha. The Spanish demolished the temple in Cusco after taking the gold they found and built the Catholic Santo Domingo Church on top of its ruins.
We are members of the Atum Ayu Coricancha, a spiritual Andean brotherhood, and we came here to Lima specifically to bring a message, a letter on account of the arrival of Pope Francis, to whom we ask very kindly to begin a horizontal dialogue with the representatives of our Andean people who practice their ancestral worldview, and that this dialogue allows us to recover our temple temple of the sun, the sacred Coricancha, that has been in the hands of the Catholic Church for more than 500 years.
These believers say, as the Church has the Vatican, their Vatican is Coricancha. Meantime, another indigenous community, the Iseha, is also making its case for land rights. They want Pope Francis to mediate their battle for ancestral lands that have been threatened by rampant gold mining, illegal logging, and drug trafficking. The Iseha are reportedly Peru's smallest indigenous group, and they believe they have been sidelined.
We have been held back for some time from free transit through the forest where our fathers and grandfathers work around. Now they're asking us for papers and payments to live here. Before, nobody asked us our name, and this isn't what we want. The oldest among us don't understand such a word. This was all our home.
Members of the Iseha community will raise their concerns with the Pope on Friday. They will be part of some 3,500 people from indigenous groups in Peru, Bolivia, and Brazil to meet with Pope Francis.
The Peruvian Catholic Church has been led by Opus Dei and other conservative forces for decades. With the visit of a more progressive pope, some believers hope the church will begin to confront topics that have been taboo.
Days before Pope Francis arrived in Lima, the Vatican intervened in the solemnization, dismissing its director because of the crisis caused by sexual abuses committed by its founder, Luis Figari. The local church declined to comment to the press.
Cardinal Tobin, who was in charge, now it's being led by a Colombian bishop who is a commissioner, would be the technical word. But I come back to the Pope mobile. I come back to the Pope's visit. This is a before and after.
A before and an after. The Peruvian church, that has been led by Opus Dei bishops for 3 decades, faces one of its worst crises because of the cases of pedophilia, but it is still protected by the Vatican. However, Pope Francis has distanced himself from the internal power core and takes a position which for many, it is the beginning of a change in the Catholic Church.
Pope Francis has also talked about the LGBT community, which he doesn't condemn and says therefore the Church shouldn't as well. This is an important statement, and also the topic of abortion, which the Pope has pointed out cannot be so inflexible and hard with women who have had abortions. But without going against John Paul II's Gospel of Life, nor the Roman Catholic ordinances in any of these themes.
Even the most conservative in the region support the Pope's position.
What do you think of Pope Francis? Do you think his speech is more open-minded than the Peruvian Church?
Of course, it's a total innovation.
Pope Francis is Jesuit and has a much more inclusive speech, I will say, and he is open to different views. The Peruvian Catholic Church might be more conservative with a more classic doctrine.
On his next visit, Pope Francis is expected to refer to topics as the environment's protection, gender equality, respect for the LGBTI community, among other controversial topics for the Peruvian Church.
Pope Francis took the time to make a few wishes come true on his trip. He officiated the marriage of 2 flight attendants working on the Papal plane. The couple told the Pope that they had been married in a civil service, but their religious ceremony was cancelled because a powerful quake struck Chile that fateful day in 2010. The quake had damaged their parish church in Santiago. And in Iquique, Pope Francis broke protocol and got off the Pope mobile to help a policewoman who was thrown off her horse as he passed. Francis stood by the woman's side until an ambulance arrived to carry her away. Really dramatic for them. And we'll be back very soon, so stay with us. Indigenous leader Maria Magdalena Cuc Choc, famous for her activism against a Guatemalan mining company, has been arrested. Our correspondent Santiago Boton has more.
Indigenous leader Maria Magdalena Cuc Choc was arrested by the National Police after doing a translation at a hearing for a land claim. The court charged her of misappropriation and threats. Maria Magdalena Cuc Choc is a recognized Mayan leader in the Izabal region and is also part of the resistance movement against CGN mining company, Pronico. Various social organizations have issued a statement demanding her prompt release. The Rigoberta Menchú Foundation has asked authorities to guarantee her physical integrity and respect her constitutional rights.
Bolivian President Evo Morales said the national and international team handling the country's maritime dispute with Chile will convene in The Hague next week. This dispute dates back to 1879, when Chile took over land rich in minerals and also snatched some 400 kilometers of Bolivia's coastline, making it a landlocked country.
We have had various meetings with our national and international legal team to continue collecting new arguments and elements for the oral hearings. We will invite the former foreign ministers to listen to their opinions, because we are at the very final stretch for Bolivia to go back to the Pacific with sovereignty. We are convinced that Chile has delayed the process, and after many debates thinking about sovereignty, we have decided to go to The Hague.
At least 5 people have been killed in Mexico City after a train derailed in a densely populated area. The cargo train went off the rails in the suburb of Ecatepec at around 6:30 in the morning. The last car of the train crashed into a house along the tracks, killing 5 members of a family. The cause of the derailment is still unknown. Meanwhile, thousands of people have marched in Chiapas to demand justice over the femicide of Gloria Castellano-Becasa at the weekend. The 24-year-old was found dead inside a well close to the place where she was last seen on Friday night. The demonstration started at the youth park. They want those responsible to be punished. The leader of Colombia's Revolutionary Alternative Forces of the Commons, or FARC, plans to run in next year's presidential elections. Rodrigo Londoño, better known as Timonchenko, says he's committed to bringing peace, but observers warn it would be challenging for the FARC to transform itself from a guerrilla group to a political party. Meanwhile, the electoral process is underway in Colombia, with security being the key issue for voters.
Colombia's electoral machine has been put in motion. Over the past few hours, the National Registry confirmed which candidates collected enough signatures to be eligible for the upcoming presidential elections. Out of 11 hopefuls, 3 were deemed ineligible.
We now have presidential candidates, those who registered political parties and those who collected signatures. Only 3 candidates did not collect enough signatures. Nevertheless, we've got a wide spectrum of candidates.
Moreover, political coalitions are taking shape. On Tuesday, presidential hopefuls Gustavo Petro, Clara López, and Carlos Caicedo declare they will organize a referendum to determine who will be the candidate of their leftist coalition.
The coalition we introduced yesterday is closely attached to the peace accord, but it also believes in a new economic model that goes beyond our extractivist doctrines over oil, coal, and gas. We want to pose a profound democratic reform for Colombia.
Meanwhile, all over the country, the road to congressional elections is being smoothed over. Yet, many people still face uncertainty and political violence. Over the past few days, pamphlets have been circulating which threaten alternative candidates, in particular those from FARC and social leaders.
The question is, which is the democracy we want? We need to guarantee the voice and participation of sectors that have yet to receive those guarantees which other sectors have traditionally enjoyed.
On Tuesday, 2 former FARC combatants were murdered in Antioquia. The newly formed political party claimed the murders happened hours after the victims held a meeting with community to boost their campaigns in the region.
A country that's moving forward under a peace accord cannot afford to build its democracy over the grace of the opposition and of those who decided to join the side of lawfulness and democracy.
Inevitably, peace will be at the center of the upcoming elections, but this time the question will be, what kind of democracy does Colombia want? A far-reaching one that protects the lives of those with critical or dissident thinking, or one that's based on political violence?
Dominica's Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries will distribute grants to help farmers restore their businesses. $7 million in funds will be administered by the aid bank. The money is meant to ease the burden on farmers who suffered tremendous losses from Hurricane Maria in 2017.
The government proposes to do so by commenting United States $7 million, equivalent to 18,817,400 Eastern Caribbean dollars from funds provided by the World Bank under the Disaster Vulnerability Response Project, DVRP.
Jamaican Prime Minister Andrew Holness has declared a state of emergency in the parish of St. James to address rising crime. This means security forces operating in the parish now have extraordinary powers, and some public rights of civilians have been suspended. The Prime Minister says crime and violence is escalating at such a rate that public safety is in danger.
The data show that the parish of St. James has historically and comparatively recorded the highest number of murders for a parish in the history of the nation. In fact, the parish that has the second highest number of murders recorded, just about half the number of murders that were recorded in St. James. In other words, the number of murders in St. James is twice as high as the parish that has the second highest number of murders in Jamaica.
The United States has banned citizens from Belize, Haiti, and Samoa from applying for the temporary work visas. These are visas given out to seasonal, low-skilled workers. The move comes just days after President Donald Trump questioned why the U.S. had to take in migrants from what he described as shithole countries. That remark sparked protests internationally and at home, with members of the Haitian community demonstrating outside Trump's resort in Florida. The U.S. says the decision was based on the high rate of overstaying among Haitians and concerns about human trafficking based on Belize and Samoa's reluctance to accept nationals who have been ordered to leave the United States. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. The International Conference on Jerusalem has started in Cairo, Egypt, to discuss the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. The conference will examine Washington's decision to recognize Israel as the capital of Jerusalem and its possible consequences. The international meeting, which saw the participation of more than 100 representatives of the three major monotheistic faiths, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, pointing out that Jerusalem cannot be the exclusive possession of just one religion, nor just one ethnicity. Massive funding cuts to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees by the United States pro-Israeli administration spell disaster for tens of thousands. The UNRWA funds projects from medical aid and schooling to rubbish collection in Palestinian refugee camps in Lebanon, and they are already concerned about the slashed funding. Many parents fear that without schooling, their children run the risk of ending up in crime or on the streets.
In the long run, we expect the school to be completely closed. In the short run, we expect the number of classes to drop and the number of subjects taught to children to be reduced. UNRWA is threatening to suspend employees' daily contracts. And when a teacher leaves, no one replaces him, and we cannot do without him. I can't say to a teacher who already has 30 classes a week to give to take on 10 more.
The Women's March is taking to the streets to once again protest the government of Donald Trump, just 1 year after he was inaugurated. Our correspondent, Alina Duterte, has the details.
Last year, an estimated 5 million protesters marched in an international mass demonstration the day after President Donald Trump's inauguration. The Women's March will return this weekend. The mission of Women's March, they say, is to harness the political power of diverse women and their communities to create transformative social change. Women's March is a woman-led movement by providing intersectional education on a diverse range of issues and creating entry points of new grassroots and activists and organizers to engage in local communities through training, outreach programs and events. Women's March, they say, is committed to dismantling systems of oppression through nonviolent resistance and building inclusive structures guided by self-determination, dignity and respect. Through dozens of protests this weekend in the principal cities of the United States, the Women's March, they say they want to show that women's rights are human rights and human rights are women's rights, including, they say, the black woman, the native woman, the poor woman, immigrant woman, disabled, Muslim, lesbian, queer, and trans woman. They say that the women are free and able to care for and nurture their families. However, they are farmed in safe and healthy environments, free from structural impediments.
We thank Alina for that report. Social activists in the United States are demanding the freedom of jailed ex-Black Panther Abu Jamal. Dozens of people holding signs gathered outside the Center for Criminal Justice in Philadelphia on Wednesday to demand Abu Jamal's release. The former Black Panther is serving life in prison for the murder of a Philadelphia police officer in 1981. According to Abu Jamal's attorney, he was framed and hasn't been granted the right to a fair trial.
The issue here is the fact that the judge who sat on his appeals court had been the prosecutor who prosecuted Mumia to make sure that his death sentence was upheld. So you have the prosecutor, then the judge, ruling on the same issues that he had been the prosecutor for and pushing. So here is a basic fundamental of supposed to be American democracy. 250 years after the U.S. Constitution was the first time the U.S. Supreme Court said that you could not be a judge and a prosecutor in the same case.
The 12th legislative session has begun in the Catalan Parliament with a new speaker sworn in, but with two of its legislators still in jail. Our correspondents, Carlos Collazos and Joan Ortiz, tells us more.
Headlines show all possible paths for the new parliament. Newspapers in Madrid found Roger Torrent's speech after the inauguration ceremony had a conciliatory tone. On the other hand, news in Barcelona highlights his desire to recover the institutions that were taken over by the Spanish government through Article 155. According to Torrent, the first step for the parliament is to find a president of Catalonia.
The next step will be for the leader of the parliament to begin a round of talks with all parliamentary groups to know their proposals for candidates for president of the Generalitat.
There is judicial pressure from Madrid. A judge hasn't ruled on the request to free Jordi Sanchez, Jordi Cuixart, and Joaquim Forn, even though they are elected legislators in an established parliament. We spoke to lawyer Albert Torra, who said there is a political motive behind keeping the lawmakers behind bars.
The real reason behind keeping them temporarily in prison is to prevent them from holding their position for which they were voted. This judicial decision, from my point of view, directly infringes the International Treaty of Civil and Political Rights, subscribed to by the Spanish state as part of its constitution.
Meanwhile, the police repression during the October 1st referendum has made headlines again. The Interior Minister, Juan Ignacio Zoido, in a statement in the Senate, said that the security forces acted appropriately since some of the protesters were hostile. The use of these agents cost the state 87 million euros.
Había muchos ciudadanos pacíficos.
There were many peaceful citizens, but I have to say that among those people that went out to vote, there were organized and coordinated radical people infiltrate.
Y coordinados.
It remains unknown if Charles Puigdemont can be sworn in remotely as president. Puigdemont and 2 other lawmakers are in Belgium and have formally requested to delegate their vote inside Parliament. The main challenge for this institution will be the quest for independence from Spain.
In Australia, a drone has rescued 2 teenage swimmers stuck in rough seas. It's believed to be the world's first drone rescue in the ocean. In the dramatic aerial footage from Lennox Head in New South Wales, the drone is seen dropping a flotation device. All right, you're seeing the footage there. The drone is seen dropping a flotation device to the distressed boys. They were then able to cling on to the rescue pod and swim to shore. A member of the public actually called in the distress call, and the rescue actually took place in less than 70 seconds. And now let's take a look at the stories going on around our increasingly warmer world.
The dramatic warming of the planet has been highlighted in new global data by the United Nations, who announced that the last 3 years have been the hottest on record.
Of course, the ranking warmest or second warmest is not the big story. The big story is the trend. So you have to look to the trend. And also some manifestation of that warming with respect to other climate features like the sea ice. We have been seeing that 2017, the annual average sea ice extent was the second smallest on the record.
Members of Greenpeace have raised a 6-metre statue of Lady Justice in front of the Congress Centre in Davos, Switzerland, where the World Economic Forum is due to take place next week. Demonstrators called the annual meetup of global politicians and business leaders a gathering of the, quote, world elite talking about a shared future in a fractured world. An enormous purification tower, built to tackle the issue of haze, has begun trial in the city of Xi'an in northwest China. The 60-metre-high tower mainly consists of a heat collector fixed on a glass pedestal and an air diversion tower that is supposed to improve the overall air quality. China is among the most polluted countries in the world and has been looking for innovative ways to deal with the problem. Not for the faint-hearted. One of the scariest and most dangerous bridges on the planet has been captured on film in eastern Siberia. This 20-metre-high and 500-metre-long bridge is barely wide enough to fit a vehicle. Despite its below-par condition and old decaying wooden flooring, the bridge is actively used by 1,500 people every day, at their own risk.
We've come to the end of this evening's news show, and we're going to say goodbye with live images from Lima, Peru, where Pope Francis has just arrived. So you're actually getting there. So for these and many other stories, since our newscast has ended, you can find them on our website, tellusyourtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Sweeney Gray. Thank you so much for watching.